Sugar, spice, and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. Well, that's what we were told when we were younger. You know the nursery rhyme. Pink bows, frilly dresses, patent leather, Mary Jane shoes. Those are just some of the things that I know in my lifetime as a little girl, we were kind of conditioned to know. And the other thing was to grow up and have 2.5 kids and live in a beautiful house with a white picket fence and be someone's wonderful wife one day. That's how it is in fairy tales, but not necessarily how it is in real life. On this episode of the Silver Fox Journal Podcast, join me as I discuss what it's like to be a childless wonder. Are you ready? Let's go. So I was actually supposed to be having this conversation with a good friend of mine, but you know, it's around the holidays and it's kind of hard to get things synced up. She will be here eventually and we will have some wonderful, funny stories to share. But I wanted to go ahead with the podcast topic, and that's the childless wonder. Well, I joke around and I call myself that sometimes because number one, I'm childless. Number two, I am a wonder. I'm one of the ninth wonder of the world. No, but seriously, as of late, I've had the opportunity, as I get of what they call a certain age, as I get closer to 40, I recognize that there's a lot of women. Of course, women are having children at a later age. And there's been research that shows people across different cultural and ethnic backgrounds are having less children. And I can say that as a woman who is not a mother, it has been an interesting journey. I remember as a little girl, like I said earlier, you know, we're kind of conditioned. I can't speak for all countries, but growing up in the U.S., you're kind of conditioned to want to be a mom. Whether it's based on some type of religious belief or social constructs, the idea is that every woman is supposed to be a mom. That's not the case. And as we become more sophisticated in medical advances and recognize that fertility isn't just a woman thing, it has to do with men and women. Fertility can affect, of course, if and how you have kids. When I was younger, and as if you've listened to my series before now, I have a condition called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and one of the major tenets of the condition is that it can affect fertility. And so over the years, in my last marriage, I never got pregnant, and that was okay at the time because it was definitely a part of our family planning not to have children. But as I've gotten older and start to get closer to the age of recognizing that, yes, people can have healthy children as they age, but it definitely becomes a little harder to do. And it's even more harder. Did I just say that? I did. Ignore that. It's even harder when you have the question of fertility in front of you. I remember that I did a lot of things in my youth that kind of, even though I hadn't set my mind on being a mom, it was like already ingrained in me that I was going to do. When I was 18 years old, I had a friend of mine, Charlie. I'm mentioning your name directly. Charlie loves tattoos. And I remember that at that point, I was free to do whatever I wanted with my body. And he called me one day and he said, hey, meet me at the tattoo parlor. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I get there. And I didn't plan on getting a tattoo. I'm 18. I'm watching my friend. He's getting a tattoo. He tells the lady, he was like, hey, I'll pay for whatever tattoo she's about to get. And so my first tattoo I ever got was on my stomach, right below my belly button. And so from then on, I told myself, this is going to be my mission. You know how people get sleeves and they get leg tattoos, these big back tattoos. My thing was I was going to have this elaborate themed tattoo on my stomach. So I got the first tattoo and I waited probably about a year and a half, and I got the second tattoo, and one was above my belly button, one's below. And the idea was to have these symbols on each side of my belly button and then connected by some beautiful art and some meaningful sayings and all this kind of stuff. And I remember by that time, I'm now in early to mid 20s. And this is when I was like, oh, I think I'm going to get married again. And, what if I want kids? So I stopped. So as it stands right now, I have 2 tattoos on my stomach that never got connected because I didn't complete them in preparation of believing that I was going to be a mom. I know a lot of people say, well, I was going to do this, but I want to wait because I think I want to be a mom, or I plan on having 2 kids. I want 2 boys, or I want 2 boys and 2 girls. And this is how I'm structuring my life. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that. There's an author named Elizabeth Gilbert. And for those of you who aren't really in the literary world, I won't begin to lie to you and say I read a lot because I don't. But she is the author of Eat, Pray, Love, for those of you who haven't read the book but seen the movie. And during her quest of trying to figure out what it is that she wanted to do and basically what she wanted to be when she grew up, going through her marriage and recognizing that she no longer wanted to be married in her first marriage, she said there are 3 types of women. There are mommies, aunties, and women who should never get within 10 feet of a child. And I remember watching this episode because a lot of her points, she was on Oprah's Super Soul Sundays or something like that. And I had read things and seen videos of her before, but this was the first time I had actually sat down and taken some time to listen to the commentary and the conversation between her and Oprah. And when she said that, it was kind of like a eureka moment for me, because I never really questioned or asked myself what type of mommy I would be, or would I be a mommy. It's just, I think it was always ingrained in me that I was going to be a mom. And I thought, am I a mommy? Am I an auntie? Or should I be within 10 feet of a child? Well, I can go ahead and knock down the should I be within 10 feet of a child thing, because I'm pretty good with kids. I feel kind of weird around them at a certain age because I feel like they're fragile and I'm going to break them, which is not the case. But that's because I haven't had a lot of time with kids. And I know some people will say, oh, you're so tender and such a caring person. But I have a family that has a lot of older people in it. We just don't have babies. Like, I come from a small family on my mother's side, and only one of my cousins has 2 children. Nobody else has kids. I didn't have any. I do know that a couple of my relatives aren't in the position to where they can have children, and my sister and I just don't have kids. So the idea of actually being a mom is more real to me now, even fast forward, knowing that I had fertility issues in the past. And after she said that, I discovered that in my heart of hearts, I'm an auntie. And I'm okay with that. Now, that doesn't mean that if in God's infinite wisdom and in the universe aligns and everything goes the way that it should, that I could never be a wonderful mom. But I never counted out with finding out earlier in my life that I might have fertility problems. I never counted out being a mom. I might be a mom by proxy. I don't necessarily have to give birth to a child to be a great mom. I could be an adoptive mother, which at that point, that child would be my child. Or I could be an awesome stepmommy. That's all the things that I've always said to myself. And when I was younger, I thought less of the idea because I thought more of the ownership of becoming a mom. But now at 40 years old, pretty much, and not really directly looking to have kids anytime soon, I've kind of relinquished control to the fact that if it's meant to be anything other than me just being a great auntie, that's what I'll be. And I know I look like a circus unicorn to a lot of people, and especially at my age. And if I have conversations, even when I dated in the past, and people would say, well, how many? It's so funny how people would just assume and say, well, how many kids do you have? And I'm like, what? I don't have, what? I'm sorry, you said how many? I don't have any kids. And then they're like, what? They're looking at me like I'm an elf with gold tap shoes on. I'm sitting here like, I don't have any children. And then one of the biggest questions I get from people is, well, what's wrong? And I'm like, what's wrong? Or do you not like kids? And I'm like, do I not like kids? Or is there something that's stopping you? And I'm like, I often wonder, like, what is it that people are thinking in their minds when they make assumptive statements like that? I'll never forget this time when I was married the second time, and we had made a decision then between the fertility concerns and other things going on in our life that we weren't ready to have kids, and we were going to plan for it later. And so there were two different occasions. One, both of them happened to be at parties, but one of them happened to be at like a reception or something. And there was a couple, and they looked like Ken and Barbie. It was the most amazing thing. And they were just so sweet and bubbly. And she made mention of like, well, our sister is watching the kid, or my mom is watching the kids. And she said, well, who's watching your kids? And I looked over at my ex-husband like, I don't know you like that. And second of all, who said we have kids? And I said, well, we don't have any children. And the lady said, really? And she looked over at her husband like, what? They don't have any kids? And I said, no, we don't have any children. And she comes over to me, and even though you can't see me, or would just imagine standing in front of someone, and she comes over with her hand out like high five, and she makes a circular motion above my stomach and says, is everything okay? And I'm like, what? Did she just... So I look over and I'm like, is everything okay? And my ex, who's a man of very few words, looked at me like, and he goes, excuse us. And we walk away, and he's like, don't even say it. Just let it go. So I thought that was pretty insensitive, because you don't really know what's going on. Why would you just make the assumption that something's wrong? So fast forward, probably I'd say about 3 or 4 months. It was a busy summer for things going on. We went to some type of gathering, and there was an older woman. She had a little bit of gray in her hair, but obviously older. And I don't even know what the conversation was about, but she makes another assumptive statement, just like the couple did. She goes, well, how many children do you have? And he looked at me and kind of smiled like, is this happening again? And I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, we don't have any children. I don't remember saying that we did. And the woman said, why, do you not like children? And I said, yeah, I think kids are awesome, but we just don't have any. And she said, well, isn't that a little bit selfish of you? And I looked and I said, excuse me? Is that a little bit selfish of me? And she goes into this kind of long-winded scriptural relation to letting us know that it was God's will for us to have children, and that if we weren't going to do that, then, the whole purpose of this was for us to couple up and procreate. And instantly, my ex-husband had this look on his face like, if you don't get this lady from in front of me. And I said, oh, excuse us. And I walk him away. And when we walked to the car, I told him, I said, I just don't get why people feel like there has to be such an emphasis on childbearing and when we're going to have kids. And he said, you know what? No one needs to know what we have going on. Just don't worry about it. And, it was done. I mean, we knew what our decisions were. We knew what we wanted to do with our life and how we wanted to have kids. And, I just let it kind of go. And then, fast forward the many years after I've been divorced and not having any kids and being a childless wonder, I had to come to grips with the fact that being a mom did not and does not make me identify as the woman that I feel I am. It doesn't make me any less of a lover, of a fighter. It doesn't make me any less of a creative and a confidant. It just makes me all of those without kids. And it's okay. I may go to my grave and never have a child, but that doesn't make me not a good woman. It doesn't make me not a good centered person. And I know that I've had this conversation, like I said, one of my friends was supposed to be on here with me today, but I know a lot of women struggle with that, especially like if you look in the news now, there's quite a few women, especially famous people, because, surrogacy is an option. IVF is too, and they're both expensive. So, I know Gabrielle Union and Angela Bassett, and if I'm not mistaken, even George Lucas's current wife, they had a child surrogate. So there's quite a few people who've done it, and that's in their quest of parenthood. But I say to all of you, men and women, but women specifically, who have made a decision to also be a childless wonder is to live and embody that and realize that you can give birth to so many other things. Even if it's not being a stepmom or an adoptive mother, an adoptive parent, you can give birth to creativity. You can give birth to love and appreciation for others and other things in the world. You can travel and you can find the things that make you feel complete and whole. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a mommy. So, as usual, I thank you for stopping by, because for 15 minutes of your life, you could have been anywhere else, but you decided to come here and share it with me. And I appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week's episode of the Silver Fox Journal Podcast. Until then.